ready to start the fun.
Sandy ground is the hottest town.
Boat race going, people are wrong.
Everybody just get it down.
And that's Thursday's the grand finale.
People that's really party.
Everybody down this way.
Shouting out to railway.
Everybody down this way.
Shouting out to railway.
Watch me. Land of the sea and the sun. Carnival is a time when a lot of people come down to line. All the natives come back home.
Anguilla, 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 Anguilla. Welcome to my lovely island, Anguilla. Sun, moon, and stars and beautiful seas. Anguilla is where I want to be. There is nowhere in this whole wide world. Anguilla's the only place for me. White sand and turquoise sea, beauty and tranquility. Friendly faces everywhere you go. Anguilla, I love you so. We call it paradise, 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 paradise. Sun, moon, and stars and beautiful seas. Anguilla is where I want to be. There is nowhere in this whole wide world. Anguilla's the only place for me. This land is ours, but we love to share. Everyone is welcome here. Leave your troubles and worries behind. Kick up your shoes and relax your mind in paradise, 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 paradise. Sun, moon, and stars and beautiful sea. Anguilla is where I want to be. There is nowhere in this whole wide world. Anguilla's the only place for me. Time to eat, get a local dish. There's nothing like a skin snapper fish. If you want to know what life is worth, Anguilla is heaven and not like paradise, 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 paradise. Sun, moon, and stars and beautiful seas. Anguilla is where I want to be. There is nowhere in this whole wide world. Anguilla's the only place for me. August Monday is a sight to see. Join in the fun, come dance with me. Sandy ground is the real McCoy. But the vibes, our pride and joy. Paradise, paradise, oh Lord, paradise. It's paradise. Ah, 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 yeah, yeah. Testing.
All right, welcome everyone to District 6 debate. We will now stand for the national anthem.
God bless Anguilla, nurture and keep her noble and beauteous. She stands mid the sea, oh land of the happy, a haven will make thee. Our life and love we give unto thee. With heart and souls we build our nation proud, strong and free. We love her, hold her dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. Mighty will make her, long may she prosper. God grant her leaders wisdom and grace. May glory and honor ever attend her. Firm shall she stand throughout every age. With hearts and souls we'll build our nation proud, strong and free. We love her, hold her dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. God.
If we could continue standing, please. All heads bow, all eyes closed. Dear most kind and heavenly Father, first of all, I'd like to thank you for waking us up this morning and allowing us to see another beautiful day. As we gather here today to debate for the future of Anguilla, I ask that you bring forth the knowledge and wisdom in our candidates so that they can answer the questions to the best of their ability. I ask that you remind the audience to be on their best behavior as we are all adults, and we will act accordingly. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Testing. Wonderful. I'd like to now welcome our debaters. First, we have Mr. Curtis Richardson from the Anglo United Front. Give him a round of applause. And we also have Mr. Hayden Hughes from the Angular Progressive Movement. To moderate with me, I have Kari Goddard, a member of the One Angular Youth.
Nominees contesting the upcoming 2020 elections. will be given a chance to debate several areas of sustainable development. These debates seek to allow candidates to appeal to young voters and express their plans to achieve youth development nationally. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now into the future. At its heart are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which act as an urgent call for action by all countries, developed, developing, and in a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies to improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all the while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. Sponsors: the Government of Anguilla, Flow, Arenel, Titanium Audio Visuals, Pink Mako, Ashley & Sons. We thank you.
Give them a round of applause, please. Okay, so now we have the ground rules. Firstly, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Originally, we agreed to 5 minutes, so you'll be allowed the 5 minutes, if you so wish. Candidates will be given 5 questions from the Anguilla National Youth Council on the Sustainable Development Goals. Each candidate will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to respond to the question. In this section, the candidate is only to refer to the moderator in his or her response. After the candidate has been given an opportunity to respond, a maximum of 2 minutes will be given to each candidate to rebut the stance of their opponent or share further information on the question or topic, if so desired. Only in this rebuttal section are candidates allowed to respectfully refer to their opponents. After the initial 5 questions, questions will be fielded from the virtual and live audience. Questions must be posed to all candidates. Questions with hidden agendas or that may seem confrontational will not be asked. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question from the audience with a minute rebuttal if so desired. After this segment is completed, candidates will be given 3 minutes to give a closing statement. If questions are not clear, kindly ask the moderator to repeat the questions. So the most important part now, the rules to the audience. To ensure a debate of quality, we ask that the audience be respectful to all candidates. Please place all phones on silent. I'll wait about 10 seconds.
And if you're not sure how to put it on silent, please turn them off.
Thank you. The audience is not allowed to applaud or make any noise of any kind to interrupt the response of any candidate. So even when your candidate that you support is speaking, you cannot interrupt him either. Any audience member that insists on doing such will be asked to leave, respectfully, of course. No one is allowed to go down into the public library, and lastly, please be respectful. So now we'll begin with the opening statement from Mr. Richardson. So every round, we'll switch who goes first. So Mr. Richardson, you go first in the opening statement, and Mr. Hughes, you answer the first question first. Before each question, you'll be given 1 minute to prepare your responses. So we'll start with Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Audience gathered here, those listening via radio and following on the internet, good evening. I want to applaud the Anguilla National Youth Council for organizing these debates. A fundamental ingredient of any healthy and thriving society is the ability to have discourse along lines of commonality and differences. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals embodies much of what I believe in. My life work and my living are centered around one mantra: love your neighbor as you love yourself. I have always engaged my will, time, energy, and resources to feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, caring for the sick, and making the world a better place. My desire for political involvement is not about self-aggrandizement. I want to do my part in addressing people's special needs and interests. I want to play a vital role in making sure everyday living is addressed so people can escape the onslaughts of poverty, hunger, and disease. In the last 5 years, as the Honorable Elected Member for Road South and the Honorable Minister of Infrastructure of our beautiful island, Anguilla, I have worked diligently to ensure we have clean water 24/7, a strong housing stock in our communities, fit-for-purpose functional government buildings, and resiliency in our infrastructure. The evidence of my success for you, the great people of this country, are everywhere about us. Lights for Christmas after Hurricane Irma, 5 fire trucks and a newly full air-conditioned fire hall at the aerodrome, a new modern state-of-the-art air traffic control tower, and a new water storage tank on Crocus Hill, all yet to be officially commissioned, highlights the simple truth that 2015 to 2025 is really going to be a ribbon-cutting term in office. Tonight it is my pleasure to be here to answer any and all questions, knowing that we have the same vision for a better Anguilla, even though we differ on the pathway to our common destiny. I, therefore, looking back at the work that I have accomplished in the last 5 years, ask you to put your hand in mine as together we shine a bright light, like a beacon on a hill, that allows us to safely navigate the high seas of life. We have grown tremendously as a society in areas such as gender equality, but we cannot sit idly by. In the wink of an eye, all progress we have made in any of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals can be eroded if we become complacent. In the upcoming election, we have 9 women contesting. We have had recently a female governor, and in the top echelons of administration, we have women serving as permanent secretaries. In every area of society, women have been able to hold posts and serve with distinction and merit in decision-making capacities. Let us therefore go forward and build on these remarkable achievements as we solidify our foothold on life's mountain. Justice around the world is now the main topic of discussion. Worldwide, whenever justice has been delayed, denied, or trampled, peace obviously has been very much at stake. We therefore have a compelling obligation to work to ensure that any impediments to swift and certain justice within Anguilla are removed. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to be the vanguards for the creation of institutions that defend rights without fear or favor. Let us press on to greater achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals as we continually seek to build Anguilla, our only sanctuary in a cruel world, to be forever proud, strong, and free. May God bless Anguilla. I thank you.
Mr. Hughes.
Good night to everyone that is listening online and on radio, who for one reason or the next cannot be here. A special good night to all of you who are here. I wish to congratulate the Anguilla National Youth Council for conducting these very important debates. It is important that young people play a meaningful role in the development of any country, and I'm proud to be a candidate of the Movement for Change, a party that has embraced young people. For it was young people like Quincy Gomes-Marie and Deanne Kentish-Rogers who in 2009 started these political debates. And while it is, the AUF did not participate then, it is great to see every party and every candidate participating today. So we must congratulate them and congratulate the Anguilla National Youth Council. This debate speaks to sustainability. This debate speaks to a future, and a future that is mired in uncertainty. This debate promises to highlight the issues that we confront while offering solutions to the claim and charting a course that future generations will look back with admiration. It speaks to issues that impact the youth, but truly, those issues impact everyone. The issues of climate change, poverty, global pandemics, hunger, health and well-being, food security, equality, innovation, and industry, economic growth, and justice, among others. Justice. the delivery of justice, the delay and sometimes the blatant denial of justice, transparency, accountability, and good governance. Sustainability determines that we plan and we act. Sustainability determines that we bring about our people to the table, and in particular, our youth. And that is why there are so many young people on the ticket of the APM, and we believe that their time has come to rise up and be part of the change that Anguilla deserves. We believe that if we change the way we do business as a government, Anguillians will return home, and those who are home will remain home, because it isn't only about job creation, but our people, those at home and in the diaspora, can also be job creators, innovators, entrepreneurs, and employers, using their intellectual property to create and deliver the promise of the revolution when we set out to build a new Anguilla. The world continues to evolve, and change is constant. We cannot resist change, and there are several factors that will bring about change whether we want it or not. So it behooves us to ensure that we are ahead of the curve. It is imperative that we take care of our environment, preserve our natural resources, protect our aquifer, transform our electricity supply and delivery, provide clean, affordable water to all, upgrade the delivery of education and healthcare, contain and reverse the high prevalence of non-communicable diseases, develop our infrastructure, and equip our young people to be competitive on a global stage. The task before us is daunting, but doable. The task before us must be tackled by men and women who are determined to change the landscape of Anguilla, to provide opportunity through policy initiatives geared at opening doors. Our legislative agenda must take into consideration that even in our hospitality sector, we have seen a diminished role played by Anguillians in the upper echelons of management. Home ownership among youth seems to be a fleeting pastime. We have seen an erosion of the Anguillian entrepreneur because we have made it too difficult for young people to enter the business arena while facilitating those who come to our shows with cheap money and even grants from their home countries, thus creating an unfair competitive advantage. We believe that in order for us to create a sustainable Anguilla, the youth must participate, and that is why Dr. Ellis Webster has put together this team, a team that has various experiences in public policy, banking, finance and financial services, legal, medical, business, engineering, community work, hospitality, sports, and even pageantry. There is much work to be done, and we believe that we will get there because we have a record to run on, and that record, whether in public or private sector, should give us a glimpse into what we can and cannot do. I am happy to have this opportunity tonight. I am humbled by the fact that so many have circled this date on their calendars, and I am sure that this debate will not disappoint. I am here in my second political debate, and I'm very excited, and I hope at the end of the night, you, the people of Anguilla in general, and the people of Road South in particular, will be part of the change that just can't wait.
At this time, we'd like to remind the audience to please be respectful to the candidates. Shh. First question, Mr. Hughes. And what are 3 key practical steps that can be undertaken to reduce our import bill in Anguilla, taken from SDG 8, 11, and 12? I'll repeat. What are 3 key practical steps that can be undertaken to reduce our import bill in Anguilla, taken from SDG 8, 11, and 12?
Since you're ready, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There are many low-hanging fruits in Anguilla. Anguilla is a country that is blessed with a lot of natural resources that we do not take into consideration. Our most important natural resource is our people. But secondly, we have some other attributes that we have not exploited. One of those are fishing. Fishing is immensely important to the livelihood of the people of Anguilla and can create immense opportunities, not only here at home, but abroad. We have a tremendous fish import bill, tremendous, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars in imported fish every year. And we have 200 nautical miles of ocean territory that is still left to be exploited. I want to applaud the Fabian brothers of Island Harbor for investing significantly in an 85-foot trawler that can really and truly transform fishing in Anguilla. But one of the things that we fail to understand even about fishing is that if we can have a fish processing plant in Anguilla and we package fish made in Anguilla, that in itself is a marketing tool for Anguilla. Anguilla is a destination, is a tourism destination. And if we can use that, it can serve two purposes: create revenue for us, the people of Anguilla, and also market Anguilla as a destination, not only to do long-line fishing, but as a destination to travel to. A second industry that is there for low-hanging fruit that we have not exploited is that of farming. And everybody believes that we have to have immense arable land in order to embark on farming. But we don't need land to do farming anymore. Israel is a desert, but Israel can feed itself. Why is it that we do not look at the new technologies of today, hydroponics, aquaponics, and those sort of farming techniques, and develop them? And we can do it. We have had investors in Anguilla, such as Leandro Risotto, who developed a hydroponic farm at his hotel that had some of the sweetest tomatoes, freshest lettuce, and other greens and so forth down there. And I enjoyed, and I know Chris Richardson also enjoyed them over there at Cuisinart. That in itself could have served as a pilot product, as a pilot project. And I believe that if we allow for the Anguilla Development Bank to be able to lend money for persons who want to embark on that venture, that is another pillar that we can use to reduce our import bill. I honestly believe that Anguilla can be self-sustainable as it relates to feeding ourselves, but we must be willing to do the lifting and go about the work to get there. Another low-hanging fruit that we always talk about is manufacturing. And I heard the Premier speak to manufacturing and say that we have not gotten to that point as yet. But I want to remind everybody in this room that I served in an administration that developed not only a manufacturing policy, but legislation that was passed in the House of Assembly unanimously. All members of the House approved that manufacturing policy. And I know some persons may believe that our labor is too high, but we have already seen success in manufacturing in Anguilla. Persons like Kyle Hodge, that's a manufacturer. Anguilla Aluminum, that's a manufacturer. And they know the challenges of manufacturing in Anguilla when you employ significant tariffs on imported. Thank you.
In the future, you can finish your point if you see the sign, okay? Yes. Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I started out my opening statement by saying that it is always good to have discourse along lines of commonality and differences, because in Anguilla there are a lot of ideas that is shared by all of the organizations contesting for office. One of the ways that I have tried to work to reduce the import bill in Anguilla is to deal with farming. I have been able to take back 20 acres of land in the Valley Bottom, and I have, through the Agricultural Department, reorganized the sizing and redistribution of these plots. Farming provides a very important way for us to feed ourselves and to address the issue of food security. The second important step to deal with our import bill coming out of the SDGs is to educate ourselves and our population about the way that we consume, our consumption methods, and what we eat, what we take on board, all of the things that we bring to the island. For example, if we educate ourselves on the harmful effects of sugar, we can reduce our importation bill with sodas and other sugary substances that we bring to the island. So the second point is to engage in consumption education. Thirdly, as Mr. Hughes said, the fishing industry is the third way that we can reduce our importation bill. There are some types of fish that we do not get in Anguilla, that people who come to Anguilla require, but for the most part, we have 200 miles of extended fishing zone, and we really need to push the fishing industry as a third way to reduce the importation bill in Anguilla. Thank you.
You have 2 minutes to rebut.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My esteemed opponent spoke about education on the harmful effects of sugar, and I would agree with that. And I must remind everyone in the room that, again, the administration that I was part of went to Parliament and dramatically increased the duty on sugars and sugar products, sodas and the like, alcohol, to reduce the thrust of non-communicable diseases in Anguilla. These are things that we actively did and were heavily criticized by my esteemed opponent and his colleagues. Another thing, if we want to talk about reducing non-communicable diseases, then we must also consider that canned products, in particular canned beef and the like, can really cause hypertension and diabetes and so forth. And these are things that we must also educate ourselves on. And I would like to see that we, again, reduce our reliance on imported products, in particular canned foods, sugars. And you can do that through the tariff. If we're going to continue to maintain a tariff in Anguilla, we can use the tariff to determine that. We can also ban certain products, such as MSGs. We have MSG, which is a harmful product to the people of Anguilla and anybody in the world, and there are some countries that have banned MSGs. That is somewhere we can reduce as well. There are a number of products that we need to ban in Anguilla, and we're moving in that direction. And unfortunately, the time ran out. But I must say that education is of importance, but we must address the issue of developing our industries in Anguilla, farming, fishing, light manufacturing, and so forth. And those are the pillars that can really make us resilient and sustainable.
Mr. Richardson.
We have to get on board with doing what we can to increase our production here in agriculture. One of the things that has hampered agricultural production to a large extent has been water. And I am very happy to have been the Minister for Agriculture and to have sit with the Farmers Association. And I have been able to deliver to them their requests for a special rate for water to impact the increase in the productivity of farming. They have come back to me in recent times requesting a further better deal on the provision of water. And when I return to office, I will look into doing that so that we can develop farming for food security here in Anguilla to the highest possible levels. Thank you very much.
Okay, we move straight into our second question. What decisions must be made in your district and Anguilla as a whole to allow young people access to affordable housing? SDG 1, 9, and 11. What decisions must be made in your district and Anguilla as a whole to allow young people access to affordable housing? SDG 1, 9, and 11. After a minute, we will start with Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. There are a lot of ways that we can go about assisting young people to give them access to affordable housing. As someone who has been heavily involved in the real estate industry, after I lost the second election in 2010, I was forced to find a way to defend my family. And I came upon the real estate industry. One of the ways that I found very helpful, as I have been able to help almost 70 young persons to acquire land to build homes. One of the things that must be done is the pricing of land. We must make a concerted effort to educate landowners that if we want to build equity and equality in our civilization, we have to have prices on land that give young people an opportunity to be able to own their own lots. Secondly, one of the things that I found that was extremely important in giving young people an opportunity to have access to affordable housing is that the land must be sized to have a size that is usable. What I find very appropriate is 0.15 acres to a quarter acre. 0.15 acres to 0.25 of an acre is a good plot of land to give young people an opportunity to develop their own affordable housing. Thirdly, government can push an initiative that can waive some of the taxes so that young persons, young families who are starting out looking into building homes or buying homes, they can have a reduction on the amount of taxes that they will pay as a first-time home owner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Now, Mr. Hughes, same question. You would like me to repeat?
No, thank you.
Okay, good.
Affordable housing. Affordable housing is something that is immensely important to all of us. And persons of my generation before, we could afford houses even on a meager salary because we grew up in the spirit of jollification, where once we bought the materials, we could bring our friends together and we could build our homes. I myself took 9 years to build my home, 9 years. And I'm still building my business over the past 25 years. But affordable housing has become very difficult for young people today. And that is because there's a low access to funding. Young people find it increasingly difficult and sometimes impossible to borrow money. And that prohibits their opportunities to have housing. Now, there's opportunities there still because the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla is owned by the government of Anguilla. It's a government institution. And one of the things that I've learned from the CEO, the capable CEO, Ms. Francois, of the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla, is that the bank has a lot of liquidity. And we all know that cash is a liability. And in order for the bank to turn a profit and to be truly sustainable, they have to be able to lend money to those who are capable of repaying those loans. And there's a lot of young people in Anguilla that I meet across the island day to day that can pay those loans. But the red tape leads from here to the Dominican Republic over to Venezuela and back. And because of that, they find it extremely prohibitive to acquire loans. So if we have a mandate for the bank where they can have a thrust relative to providing loans for homes as opposed to providing loans for expensive brand new vehicles, then that can be something that we can do as it relates to setting the mandate for the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla. Because at the end of the day, it's still the people's bank. So that is something that we can do and something that is definitely doable. And the thing is this. Just to speak of purchasing a plot of land is all well and good. But after you purchase the plot of land, then what? So affordable housing can only be done through a collaborative effect between the government of Anguilla, the people of Anguilla, and the National Commercial Bank of Anguilla.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Richardson, you have 2 minutes to rebut or add further information on the topic.
Whenever you want to engage in representing people, you have to be able to think beyond just the horizon. One of the things that I have been able to do for young people who want to own their own home is encourage landowners to give young people a special deal. And that deal is, if a piece of land costs $20,000, a young person can pay $3,000 and get title to the land with the arrangement that they will continue to pay what they can every month or every other month, but the land will be transferred in their name, and that will empower the young person to be able to put the land up to the bank and go ahead and build their own home. A lot of landowners have said to me, why should I take my property and give it to a young person so that they can put it up to the bank and go ahead and build a home? It has to do with what the SDGs are trying to do within society. We have to build our young people to be able to own their own homes. We have to give them the confidence that somebody will take a chance on you to better your life. One of the things that has helped me a lot in my life is that a lot of people have invested and has given me the opportunity to grow and expand. And this is something that I want a lot of people to be able to give to young people, the opportunity to grow, expand, and develop themselves. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes?
To just say that you're going to encourage landowners to reduce the cost of the land is not good enough. For the most part, a lot of people in Anguilla do own land. But for those persons who don't own land, a minister of government just can't go to them and say, sell your land at a reduced rate so that a young person can have land. That is pie in the sky. That's a pipe dream. But there are other ways in which you can do this. Right now, the banks are giving interest at 0.05% for term deposits. That's a very low interest rate. So the spread between the interest rate in which a bank will lend money and the interest rate in which they are giving you on your deposits is significant. So one of the things that we have to also do is encourage the banks to reduce the interest rates on mortgages. And if you reduce the interest rates on mortgages and make it even more affordable, then that young person can purchase not only land, but can purchase houses. As we know, there's a receiver at this time that have a tremendous amount of properties. And that is also an opportunity in which the receiver can then work with the prospective owner and say, you can purchase this home, and you can retrofit it, you can finance it through the bank, and those are also opportunities. So there's an immense amount of opportunities, but you must have the will and you must have the desire to see it through to the end. And just to encourage somebody to sell their land at a reduced rate, paying a down payment, is just not good enough.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. As we move on to question 3, eradication of poverty is the first sustainable development goal. In what ways is drug abuse linked to poverty, and how would you recommend that drug abuse be addressed in Anguilla? I'll repeat. Eradication of poverty is the first sustainable development goal. In what ways is drug abuse linked to poverty, and how would you recommend that drug abuse be addressed in Anguilla?
Drug abuse, if you look at any society, sorry?
I just want to remind you guys, if you wish, you have a minute to prepare, but you look ready to go. So go ahead. You can start if you wish, Mr. Hughes.
Drug abuse and poverty goes hand in hand. And sometimes drug abuse is necessarily linked to poverty. Drug abuse can be linked to certain psychological problems. Someone loses their job and can't pay their bills. Sometimes they turn to drugs. But at the end of the day, it comes down to education. It comes to the way we develop our people, the way we develop our children. Take, for example, I'm going to give you a personal example. Every day I pick up my sons from school. And every day, once or twice a week, I drill it in their heads not to engage in drugs and so forth. Every day. And I want to say how important this is. When I was 7 years old, there were some construction workers working above my parents' home, and they were swearing, and I swore. And it was the last time I swore. My father heard me, and he gave me a washout that I can never forget, and I never swore again in my life. So it is important to instill in our children those values and so forth relative to drugs and so forth. But sometimes it comes to psychological issues, and sometimes we see a lot of children that have fallen along the wayside, and we just don't understand what it is that is troubling them. But if we have programs in place that can identify the issues and treat the issues, and once we can do that, then I believe that the cycle of drug abuse can be reduced. But we go back to this issue of poverty. Poverty sometimes comes down to education opportunities. And a lot of people who are poverty-stricken for the most part are less educated people. You can see, even in Anguilla society, you can see that persons who have educated themselves and have been given the opportunity to be educated, they rise out of poverty. Because there's so many opportunities when you're educated, especially, and I can always go back to hospitality because that's my love, especially when you're educated in the hospitality sector, because the world now is your playground. right, as it relates to job opportunities. So education must be of paramount importance, not only as it relates to development of those young people, but also education about not using drugs, not abusing alcohol, and so forth. There are other drugs and other vices that we probably will go on and discuss as we go along, so I'll leave it right there.
Mr. Richardson, you have a minute to prepare if you wish to start.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I grew up here in Anguilla, and I had never been familiar with drugs within the society. But as in my late teenage years, I went to St. Thomas, and I was able to be raised in a society, a community called Savan, which they call the ghetto. And being raised in that environment for almost 10 years, I started to understand the affiliation between drugs and poverty. It has always been very striking that some of the poorest communities are the ones that you find have the largest drug-related abuse issues. We in Anguilla, the way that we will address drug abuse is we have to build hope. One of the ways that I was able to pierce the darkness in the Savan community was to give young people hope. We have to build recreational facilities so that young people who have talents can rise within their talents. We have seen in Anguilla that even without the necessary facilities, we have Zarnell Hughes, we have Shara Proctor, we have Ms. Harrigan from Island Harbor with basketball. But we have to put the necessary facilities in place. I am hoping that within the next 5 years, I can put an indoor professional stadium in the Road South community for the children there, so that hope can spring eternal and that we can overcome the challenges of drugs. Drugs in Anguilla is a very subtle issue within the communities. You have to look good and careful to see it, but it is something that we have to combat because we cannot continue our own societies. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes, you'd like to rebut?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My opponent spoke of building an indoor facility in Road South area. And every election cycle, my opponent continued to say he's going to build a facility in the roadside area. I've heard this over and over again. And I am sure that my opponent understands, and he clearly articulated it, that it's important that sporting facilities be developed. And I can recall vividly during the last election cycle, my opponent erected a poster with a drag strip and other sporting facilities on those posters. And no sooner that the election was over, those came down, and there was no real attempt to develop these facilities in Road South. But I must say, and this is why I made my opening remarks, and I said your record should determine whether or not you'll get it done. When I was a schoolboy, we created something called the SHP. It was really a synonym for South Hill people, but it was road area. A number of us, Patrick Martin, Barrow, Dylan Proctor, Jerome Lloyd, JJ, a number of us, and we built a basketball court in the road schoolyard. We built it. We raised money every Saturday, and we built that basketball court in Road South. We did that. And we continue to develop young people and sports in that area. I come from a background of sports. I used to be an athlete. I used to participate in track and field. I used to run for Anguilla, and that shaped the reason why I am still into sports today and still developing athletes and still working hard to reduce the spread of non-communicable diseases through my facility. That is what the record speaks to, and when you have that record, it determines what you're going to do in the future.
Mr. Richardson?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. In life, real effort is what matters. You have to get real results. I have been able to work through 2 serious agreements. One, to acquire 5 acres of land in the Center Point area for what I will call the Herbert Hughes Park, which is a park that will give people the opportunity to utilize the beach at Center Point, as well as for other recreational purposes. I have also, in the last 5 years, negotiated with investors to swap the old cottage hospital property for 6 acres of land that is to the east of Teacher Ronda's home in Blowing Point. And in making this transaction, when it is completed, like the 6 acres that the football field is to be built on further east, this 6 acres is where the sporting indoor facility will go. I have put in significant effort, but it has been the hurricane and the COVID that has delayed some of the financial investment, but I don't have to speak plenty about what I can do or what I will do. I have been demonstrated to the people of Anguilla that I am a high performer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know we are passionate, but let's just remember the ground rules. All right, so we move on to question number 4. Okay. Move on to question number 4. What changes must be made to our current tourism product to make it sustainable for the future while still promoting green living? From SDG 8, 9, 11, 13, as well as 14. One more time. What changes must be made to our current tourism product to make it sustainable for the future while still promoting green living? After a minute, we'll start with Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think that tourism has served us well here in Anguilla, but one of the key fundamental changes that we must have from 2020 going forward to defend our way of life here in Anguilla is that any significant investment in the tourism industry must address the issues of renewable energy. One of the things that I have been able to achieve is not only water 24/7, but all of the tourism properties in Anguilla are now set to surrender their water production plants to the Water Corporation of Anguilla. This is an arrangement that has to be worked out, but this is one of the things that we must pursue within the tourism product for advancing the people of Anguilla. We must ensure that all of the investment projects, and even the ones presently here, address the issues of green sustainable development, and that is renewable energy and making the fundamental changes in the way that they do their developmental projects. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much to my esteemed colleague over here. We talk about changing the tourism product. It isn't so much about changing the tourism product, it's about enhancement of the tourism product. I believe that we have a superior tourism product in Anguilla. We have a very good mix of what we will consider charming escapes, the small boutique properties, and large 5-star properties. We have a great collection of villas. We have a wonderful selection of restaurants in Anguilla, both local and foreign owned. Anguilla is the culinary capital of the world. We have magnificent chefs in Anguilla, and we also have Koth Gomes, who's a Michelin star chef in the United Kingdom. So we have the capacity, we have the capability, but when we talk about changing the tourism industry, here's where I would like to see the tourism industry change. I come from the tourism industry where I worked at a hotel where every manager and supervisor was an Anguillian. Today, many hotel operators have come to our shows on the backs of those operators, and now we have very few managers in the upper echelons of the hospitality sector. That is a fundamental change that I would like to see going forward. And when I'm elected, you can rest assured that those Anguillians at home and in the diaspora who are professionals in the hospitality sector will be given their just due. Today, we have some of the best and brightest hospitality workers sitting on the sideline. Patricia Bryan, Chris Richardson, Eustace Shaw, George Reed, Delroy Lake, and I can go on and on and on. And that is a fundamental change that we need to have. So as it relates to what we can do to enhance our tourism product and what we can do to enhance. I've worked in the industry as well where persons land on our airport, our seaports, and sometimes the tourists would say, Anguilla is a beautiful place, beautiful people. We have some of the most wonderful people in the world. But you close your eyes from the port facility until you get to your respective property, whether it's a villa. So what do? We have to enhance the Anguilla. We have to enhance our roadsides. Why is it we cannot have a private-public partnership between our hoteliers to enhance the roads from the Blowing Point Port all the way out through Spring Path or the regular road through South Hill, so that you can see a beautiful surroundings as they move forward? Not only that, we have an antiquated property tax system where we punish people for keeping their properties clean, pristine, and properly painted, and reward persons for keeping their properties 30 years later unpainted. So why is it we don't have a system of credits where persons who keep their properties painted, clean, a nice either a vegetable or ornamental garden, they get a series of credits, 10% credit here, 10% credit, and so forth, and they are rewarded for keeping their properties clean, thus enhancing the product that we have. As it relates to renewable energy, we have already seen Frangipane come off grid. And I don't know if it's sustainable for Anglec to have our major properties coming off grid and developing renewable energy. So the thrust towards renewable energy must emanate from the government of Anguilla through Anglec, and that is why it is important to keep Anglec under the people of Anguilla's hands.
Okay, so before I let Mr. Richardson rebut, I would like to remind the audience listening live as well as virtual, you can submit your questions to our email address, axayouthcouncil@gmail.com. One more time, axayouthcouncil@gmail.com. After the fifth question, we'll take the questions from the audience. So now you have Mr. Richardson rebutting or adding further information.
Before I was elected, I held the views that Mr. Hughes just expounded. But being a minister of government and having to deal with the reality that is before us, there are things that the bright mind cannot imagine because these things are real. We have Gishard, we have Chris, we have Delroy, yes. But if you speak to every single Anguillian who has worked at high levels in the tourism product industry, they will tell you that your biggest challenge perhaps has been managing their very own Anguillians. We do have some education to do. When we talk about Anglec, it's a very heavy discussion because as a young man in the Road South area, I grew up with a certain fundamental outlook on life. Anglec, the people of Anguilla, as the Minister for Infrastructure, I restored electricity in 3 months for the people of Anguilla to build confidence in investors and entrepreneurs, as well as make sure the people of Anguilla would be happy. But do you know what the price tag for the restoration of electricity was? $20 million that neither Anglec, nor Carolec, nor the government of Anguilla had. We cannot continue to live on the mercies of everyone. I would like to keep Anglec, but we have to find a way to finance and pay our own way in this life. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm waiting on the audience to get back with us. Okay, so Mr. Hughes, your opportunity to rebut or add further information.
Thank you very much. The minister speaks of the sustainability of Anglic, and he also speaks of 24/7 water, and I can tell you, there's no 24/7 water in Anguilla. That's one. Secondly, I have been throughout the length and breadth of Road South, and I know there are so many portions that water does not reach. And even those portions that water reach, it's mostly air. But when we talk about the sustainability of Anglic, and we talk about the price tag to Anglic, what the minister also fails to mention is that to date, the Water Corporation of Anguilla owes Anglic in excess of $10 million and have not paid their electricity bill in over a year. So when we talk about the sustainability of Anglic and Anglic's bills are not being paid, the bills are not being paid to Anglic, how can you have a sustainable entity? If the bills of Anglic was paid, then Anglic would be a tremendously profitable entity. And until that is done, we'll continue to talk about selling Anglic. And I believe that Anglic should not be sold. Anglic should remain in the hands of the people of Anguilla to be a social partner. Because if you sell Anglic, let's say for $30 million, and you owe Anglic all of these bills, government departments, what do you think is going to happen? If you and I own Anglic, we're going to ask for our money. And if we don't get paid, they will cut you. The airport owes Anglic almost $2 million EC dollars at present. So when we talk about a sustainable Anglic, how can Anglic be sustainable when the government departments, in particular those departments that are under the minister, is not paying their bills and they need to pay their share, and then we can have a sustainable Anglic and we can move forward.
As we move on to question 5. As we move on to question 5. What qualities do you possess that allow you to be an ideal candidate to represent District 6? I'll repeat. What qualities do you possess that allows you to be an ideal candidate to represent District 6? We'll start with Mr. Hughes. This question was taken from SDG 11.
Who goes first? Me? Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. One of the main qualities is empathy. Another quality is the ability to get things done. And my record proves that I get things done. I never make excuses for not getting things done. And that is a matter of fact. During my time in office, for example, we came in office and there was a tremendous challenge with moving people through St. Martin and Anguilla because in 2002, the government of Anguilla embarked on the airport expansion program that we are still paying for today. And when that airport expansion program was embarked upon, we could not get tourists to Anguilla. So the hotels, Capjaluca mainly, and other hotels jumped on board and started a charter boat business. And other people got involved in that business where we are today, where it's one of the most significant modes of transportation in Anguilla. But St. Martin, especially during the season, when you got off your plane and you got to the dock in St. Martin, it took upwards of 2 to 3 hours to get from St. Martin to Anguilla because of how cumbersome it was over there. So I decided immediately that we had to do something about it. So I took it to the Executive Council because the minister keeps saying that he has done this and he has done that, forgetting there's something called the principle of collective responsibility, whereas all of the ministers of government has to agree in order to move forward. So everything that I did, it had the willing support of the Executive Council. And we were able to develop the Anguilla St. Martin dock, which I was heavily criticized for, and is in one of the first pieces of infrastructure that was erected after Hurricane Irma was the Anguilla St. Martin dock. So how do we get things done? a number of other initiatives in terms of marketing that I embark upon that everyone said, Hayden, it cannot be done because there's no money. The Real Housewives of Atlanta, The Bachelor, and they can go on and on. And persons can whisper in the crowd, but those were tremendously important for the marketing of the destination, because the job of the government of Anguilla through the Tourist Board is destination marketing, and that is immensely important, and tourism is our bread and butter. And if you do not ensure that our bread and butter is known across the world, then we don't have any tourists. It is all well and good to have a great product, you know. You can have the best product in the world, the best services in the world, but if nobody knows about it, nobody will patronize the business because they just don't know. So the ability to get things done, and that can be demonstrated both privately and publicly. And that is one of the most important qualities that I believe that I possess.
Okay, I'd like to remind the crowd to be respectful while the different candidates are being asked, giving their response. So remember the virtue of respect. So we'll now have Mr. Chutson.
I think the qualities that make me the ideal candidate to represent District 6 is that I am results-oriented and driven. I am compassionate, and I believe in a basic standard of living for everyone. I have been able, in coming to office, to require financing from the British government, which I did not get. So I had a brainstorm with the board of ASPA, and we came up with a model called Build, Design, and Finance to repair the failing jetty at Sandy Ground. After we repaired that failing jetty, I will never talk to the people of Anguilla about building a pier. What I can speak about as the Minister of Infrastructure in Anguilla is that I am building two of the largest port developments ever seen in Anguilla. One at Sandy Ground, one that allows a 40-foot container to go on the wharf and play helicopter. It goes round and round and round. The other one is the port development at Blowing Point. And I want to remind the people of Anguilla that one of the most difficult achievements for anybody in government to do is to acquire land within an area to develop. I have been able to acquire up to 5 acres in Sandy Ground, not to build a wharf, but for port development. And I have been able to get and work on up to 8 acres of land in the Blowing Point port area for port development. That building that is going to be built shortly at the Blowing Point port is twice the size of the ABC building. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so Mr. Hughes.
I must...
Wait. Okay, good. Go ahead.
I must thank the Minister for continuing the work which the Anguilla Progressive Movement started as it relates to the failed jetty in Sandy Ground. Because it was Anguilla ANC Ports Authority under the chairmanship of Mr. Lanville Harrigan who had the evaluation done with British infrastructure to determine the issues, the length of the life, and start the process of securing funding for the development of a brand new port facility. That is a matter of fact. We talk, and not forgetting, there was also that Anguilla ANC Ports Authority that came into office in 2010 and recognized that the airport was about to collapse because the regulatory body, ASI, was about to close the airport because of the amount of leaking that was happening at the air traffic and control tower. And even as it relates to the acquisition of land that this administration has embarked upon is being paid by your Social Security funds, and we do not have an idea of how much money that was spent in acquisition of lands by Social Security, your money. But I want to say this, the Anguilla United Movement, of which I was part of, spent $950,000 acquiring land in Blowing Point, coming from the recurrent surplus position of the government of Anguilla. And we are here and we are speaking about respectful representation. And that is why I'm here. I'm here to restore respectful representation to the people of District 6 and the people of Anguilla, because my esteemed opponent continue to disrespect the people of Road South and disrespect my mother and other persons within our community.
Wait. Guys. Okay, even if you have the papers or whatever, it's still making noise, okay? No disturbance of any kind while the person is speaking. None at all.
Thank you.
Wait, 1 second. You can continue, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you very much. Please be quiet. But I'm sure there are many of you, if not all of us, who have mothers. And some of you are mothers. And we have all heard the minister continually over the last few years disrespect my mother. And I have never responded to any of that. And hopefully, after tonight, he would apologize for that, and we will move on in the spirit of respect and ensure that the people of Road South are returned to respectful representation.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Mr. Richardson, you have 2 minutes to rebut or add further information on. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The monies in Social Security is for a specific purpose. That is to defend the lives of the people of Anguilla. When I became the Minister for Infrastructure, the government did not have any funding to represent the fact that the engineers told me that the life of the jetty was down to 2 months. I want to thank people like Lenville Harrigan who worked before for whatever contribution they made to Anguilla. But I was told that there was no funding secured. I had to go through a model called Build, Design, and Finance and put it out for people to bid. And whoever won the bid had to design the repairs, they had to finance the repairs, and they had to do the actual work. That was done. As soon as I had demonstrated my capacity to deliver Anguilla without getting financial support from anywhere, the British government called me within 5 days and offered me $6 million to build a wharf in Sandyground, a new wharf. I told the British government, keep your $6 million. I am not interested in building wharfs. I want to build port development for Anguilla. I want to take Anguilla into the 21st century. The British government came back and gave me $15 million to do the port development that you see in Sandyground. That is representation. That is double for your trouble. Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd like to remind the audience that we are live on Facebook. And the childish behavior that you are marketing for Anguilla is not a good look. One second, I wasn't asking for your applause neither. So, if you can please be respectful while the candidates are speaking, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. All right, so the first question now from the audience. I'll repeat it twice because you cannot see this one. In order to meet all the SDGs ideally, we need to be in a society start over again. Guys, we have to make sure the utter quietness, utter silence, so they can understand the question. In order to meet all the SDGs ideally, we need to be in a society in which the citizens as well as visitors can feel safe. What will you do about the crime, in particular, gun violence? One more time. In order to meet all the SDGs ideally, We need to be in a society in which citizens as well as visitors feel safe. What will you do about crime and in particular gun violence? So this question we start with Mr. Hughes. You have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Gun violence have plagued Anguilla for quite some time now. Starting in 2003, we saw an escalation in gun violence that it reached a pinnacle in 2006, where a number of young persons in Anguilla died as a result of gun violence. And what is strange about the gun violence that happened in Anguilla, that during the period of our largest economic expansion, there was a much higher prevalence of guns and gun violence in Anguilla. When the economy started to tank in 2008, ironically and strangely, gun violence diminished. And as things started to get better in 2011 and 12, gun violence started to escalate again. So that is something for a social program where we have to examine the root cause and why people in Anguilla why young men in particular in Anguilla would want to go and take hard-earned money to purchase a gun. I don't understand it. I don't have the solutions for it. I cannot pronounce to be an expert on it, but what I do know is that there are people who have the ability to determine these things, and we must employ them to determine why is it that our young men are taking up guns and shooting at each other.
Okay, Mr. Richardson, you have 2 minutes to respond. The question is basically asking, what would you do about the gun violence in Anguilla?
Yes, well, in recent times, gun violence has become a fashionable way of hurting each other within the society. I live in the Blowing Point community, and there has been a number of young men who have been killed and injured in that community, as well as throughout Anguilla. There is a lot of pain, and we need to bring about a lot of healing as a nation. One of the ways that we can really address gun violence, we have to educate people about finding new ways of conflict resolution. One of the things that we learn growing up from small is something that we call last lick, where when somebody hit you and you go home crying, it is passed on as a psyche, within our psyche, that we do not take last lick. And anytime you take last lick, people believe that you're easy and that you're not serious about defending yourself. So there's an education that we have to do, first of all, and then there is a healing that we must engage in as a country in order to stem the tide of gun violence. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Hughes, you have 1 minute.
I'm sorry, there's no response needed for that. There's no rebuttal needed for that.
Wait, there's a rebuttal, or you can add further information on the topic.
Oh, well,
if you wish.
Yeah, I can add further information, but what I'm saying is I need a collaborative effort, from all of us. We have been talking governments in and out, both the administration before the previous administration, the administration just outgoing, and this administration have all spoken about gun violence and how you can stem the tide of gun violence. There have been also non-profit organizations such as TAB that have come up with plans to stem the tide of gun violence, but none of us have been able to be successful in eradicating gun violence. So I don't have the answers as it relates to that, but I believe that collectively we can come up with a plan for gun violence.
Mr. Richardson, you have a minute to add further information.
Thank you very much. I will revert back to what I think is the very basic fundamental issue that we must work on to bring about large success in dealing with gun violence, and that is conflict resolution. One of the things that I have found out is that it is not easy at times to manage your feelings, because we all have feelings. And when feelings are injured or bruised, there is a tendency to retaliate. So we must, as a country, come to a point where we seriously engage in the dialogue and bring about the discipline within ourselves to deal with anger management and conflict resolution. The time has come in Anguilla to seriously push this issue so that we can bring about healing and end gun violence in our midst. Thank you very much.
The next question from the audience. What measures will you put in place to ensure that workers in the hospitality industry are secured and provided with proper health insurance and are made pensionable? I'll repeat. What measures will you put in place to ensure that workers in the hospitality industry are secured and provided with proper health insurance and are made pensionable? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. One of the things that we have to do, as we have seen coming out of this COVID period, is the scheme that we had for Social Security has served the people of Anguilla well. We must encourage the workers within the hospitality sector, as well as the hoteliers, to set aside schemes where funds can be put aside to defend lives in the event of any eventualities. The contributions that people normally make is very painful on payday when you have these deductions from your check, your paycheck. But we have seen that in the COVID experience, these savings go a very long way over a period of time. One of the things that Anguillians must realize is that whenever we put contribution schemes in place, what has really been a blessing to the Social Security scheme is when people come into Anguilla to work and they leave their Social Security contributions behind. And we have to come up with new creative ways of continuing to put aside social safety nets for the people of Anguilla. And this is something that must be done more within the hospitality sector. And we have to look at the minimum wage. That is something that has to be looked at within the hospitality sector. We must come to the realization that there is a certain basic sum of money that people have to live off of within a given time frame. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My esteemed opponent speak about issues that they spoke about in 2015 during the election campaign that was captured in a manifesto in the 15-point Human Development Plan, where he spoke to minimum wage, he spoke to unemployment benefits and so forth. But Social Security is in dire need of reform. We have seen that. We have seen, especially during the COVID situation. But I was speaking to a young lady the other day. She brought to my attention an issue relative to Social Security, where if you are a lady and you are pregnant and you miss September and October because the hotel is closed and you're not contributing Social Security, and your baby is due in November or December, you lose much of your maternity benefits. That says that means that you need serious Social Security reform. But the question relative to this particular issue is about pension and so forth. The hospitality sector fuels our economy. The hospitality sector ensures that all workers in Anguilla that are non-hospitality related enjoys a significant and prosperous lifestyle. Take, for example, ministers of government or public servants. Their salaries are derived from the hospitality sector. Their pensions are derived from the hospitality sector. But those who work in the hospitality sector have none of these. So it is important that we urgently, quickly transform either the Social Security or implement a social safety net through Social Security, or develop a pension plan where persons will have to pay into it, have to be paid for. So persons will pay into these programs, and then at the end of their time in the hospitality sector, they just don't walk away with their last paycheck. I know so many persons that work in the hospitality sector for 10, 15, 20, and even 30 years and walked away with their last paycheck. So we have to get serious with the business of taking care of our hospitality workers. We have to get serious with providing social safety nets. We have to get serious with putting a program to ensure that pensions are available to everybody in Anguilla.
You have 1 minute to rebut or add further information.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I would just like to say there are no perfect systems. Whenever a system is created, it is the people who work the system, the people who are affected by the system, that brings that system as close as possible to perfection. What I would suggest to persons, like the case that Mr. Hughes highlighted, I would suggest that that person goes to Social Security and highlight these issues, or even share it with the minister with responsibility for Social Security, because it is the issues that slip through the cracks. Those are the ones that we need to tackle and deal with, because in this instance, she may be affected, but you may find that down the road there may be another 5, 10 people in the future who's impacted. So by highlighting the issues that are not addressed within these systems, we help other persons with what the SDG goals is all about.
Mr. Hughes?
It is all well and good to say that, but we know the issues, we hear the issues, and we have seen manifesto after manifesto after manifesto. We've heard promise after promise after promise to get it done. And once elected, there's no attempt to get it done. I'm fine if you make an attempt and you just don't get it done, because sometimes the mechanisms of government moves at a snail's pace. I understand that, but you must make an attempt to get it done. And I've seen a 15-point human development plan, and when I look through this 15-point human development plan, I have not seen any attempt to get any of these things done. And that is what bothers me. And I hope that the next government who gets into office on June the 29th will ensure that these things get done. But I also know that when the Anguilla United Movement, Anguilla Progressive Movement gets into office, they will get it done. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Still united.
So we move on to the next. Okay, so we move on to the next question from the audience. What do you think about the high cost of living in Anguilla, and what methods would you put in place to reduce it? One more time. What do you think about the high cost of living in Anguilla, and what methods would you put in place to reduce it? After a minute to prepare, we'll start with Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. The high cost of living in Anguilla is a cause and an effect. It's a number of issues that contributes to the high cost of living. And you can make a good comparison as relates to St. Martin, which is just next door. St. Martin is just next door to us. Yet the cost of freight into St. Martin is significantly lower than Anguilla. And that is because it comes to a point where critical mass in the number of persons, the number of consumers. So we have a small population, the smallest of our population, meaning that people have to pay more to sustain Anguilla. If you have a larger population, and we can develop our population, then you can spread the cost out some more. Not only that, the cost of energy in Anguilla is tremendously high. And if we can reduce our costs, which we can do through renewable sources of energy, and this is something that we can embark upon. And not only solar energy, because we can spread the solar energy throughout the island, but wind power. And Jibril Lewis developed a patent that suggests wave energy, and you can use that wave energy to generate electricity. Not only that, there are other novel products in the world that you can reduce the cost of electricity as well, such as waste to energy. We had a waste to energy project here in Anguilla some time ago. And waste to energy is something that people are afraid of. But the smokestack that we have coming from Anguilla right now produce a tremendous amount of carcinogens. But apart from that, we have a Carreto landfill, and I heard one of the questions raised in one of the earlier debates relative to the Carreto landfill and whether or not it's sustainable. And some persons say yes, it was sustainable, but the Carreto landfill has already outlived its usefulness, because there's a report that was done that states that leachates out of the Carreto landfill is already leaching into the aquifer right now at present. And this is something that needs to be urgently addressed if you want to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and our health and well-being. So these are some of the things that can reduce the cost in Anguilla, and food security. Food security is immensely important, and we tackle that issue as it relates to the development of farming as well. So those are some of the things that we can reduce the cost of living in Anguilla.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are a lot, and some of them were highlighted by Mr. Hughes, so I'll just go to 3 different ones. One, we have to seriously look into setting prices for basic staples that people use every day. That is something that government seriously has to get on board with. Number 2, we have to look at the overall general cost control. I believe in some of the stores that you go in, you may find one item for $6. You go to another store, they have it for $13, and so forth. So we need to look at what is creating the disparity in some of these prices and come about with a cost control board. We also, thirdly, we need to look at finding real, genuine, sustainable ways to financially empower our communities so that people have the purchasing power to deal with the rising costs of everyday life. And I agree with Mr. Hughes when it comes to reducing the cost of electricity, as with water. One of the things that I want to apprise the people of Anguilla on about water is that, first of all, you have to get the water working for the people. Secondly, you have to address the costs. And in addressing the costs, one of the big factors is the electricity, because the water is being provided through a reverse osmosis process. And that will be the next big task when I'm returned to office, to bring the cost of electricity down by using renewable energy to mobilize the RO plant. But there's also another thought that must come out to the public, and that is Anglic, because of the high level of electricity consumption that water is taking, Anglic needs to get involved also perhaps with the production of water under whatever umbrella we can find to get it done. Thank you all very much.
Okay, Mr. Hughes, you have a minute to add further information if you choose to rebut.
Well, purchasing power is important, but it still doesn't address the costs of living in Anguilla. And I want to say that we have talked about price control for generations. And there's a school of thought as it relates to price control is when government get involved in the private sector and setting the prices of their commodities, the price of their product, then those entities refuse to import those products. Take, for example, milk. We're going to throw one in the air, milk. Government says to the shops, you have to sell your milk at $5. But the shop realized that to put the milk on the shop, it costs $6. What happens then? Then the shop refused to import the product because the product is losing them money. So these are things that we have to examine. We have to examine carefully as it relates to government getting involved in the pricing of commodities for businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Richardson, you have a minute to rebut or add further information.
Well, thank you very much. I was very young at the time, but I do recall that down here in the Valley Bottom, they used to sell basic staples such as milk and so forth, sugar and whatever. But I see the rationale why people find capitalism appealing, that just let whatever is the market, supply and demand, just let that run things. But if we are going to talk about the SDGs, government has to put its foot down and try to defend those people who find themselves in certain narrow corridors of marginalization. In every society, we will always have persons who will be significantly challenged to get over the standard of living. And that is why we have to go back time and time again and not only talk about lifting those people out, but we have to find ways to lend a helping hand. Thank you very much.
It's the next question. Taking into consideration the current projects and the proposed projects by the respective parties, what methods of fund sourcing can you identify for the maintenance of these projects? I repeat, taking into consideration the current projects and the proposed projects by the respective parties, what methods of fund sourcing can you identify for the maintenance of these projects?
What method of? Repeat again. What method of?
Taking into consideration the current projects and the proposed projects by the respective parties, what methods of fund sourcing can you identify for the maintenance of these projects? So how do you intend to maintain these projects once they develop?
I am not, thanks for the question, Mr. Moderator. I am not clear as to whether the projects are projects related to government or projects specifically related to foreign direct investment.
Yes, so it's government projects both that are currently going on and proposed by the respective parties, once elected.
One of the ways that government has to look into dealing with financing the upkeep of these projects is government must be able to implement a sustainable plan within all of the projects that government intend to develop. We have a serious problem in Anguilla where within many of the governments of the past, even the government that I've been a part of, it has been extremely difficult in a small island state to be able to get away from dreaming big about putting a facility in place. And then as the years go by, the facility degrades, falls into degradation because we have not thought about finding ways to sustain its upkeep. One of the things that I've been able to do as the Minister for Infrastructure is for the very first time, I have carried out an enormous program for energy, an energy study and energy audit. I have carried out and I have undertaken an energy audit for all of government's buildings to see how we can find savings. And it is these type of programs and brainstorming within government that will find ways to have the monies and the revenue to defend government's projects going forward. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No. So how do we maintain the government projects, in particular these Hurricane Irma humanitarian projects that have been granted to the people of Anguilla, managed by Her Majesty's government here in Anguilla? Once these projects are completed, of course, they will need upkeep. But one of the things that we are failing to recognize and failing to trigger is that in every memorandum of understanding that has been granted by a foreign direct investment, there's a social clause in there, where all it takes is for the government of Anguilla, in particular the Minister of Finance, to trigger that clause. And then we can have a partnership between any of these foreign direct investment projects in the upkeep of our schools and so forth. That is there already. We just have to make that call. And that is how we are going to sustainably continue to maintain our schools and public facilities. Also, it comes to prioritization. Because instead of spending $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 in car rentals, that money can go to the upkeep and painting the maintenance of government buildings. These are things that we have to consider. It always comes down to money at the end of the day. For example, we talk about not having any money when the government of Angola came to office, but here are the facts. In 2015, there was a $6.5 million surplus. That's a surplus on the recurrent budget. There was also $33 million in reserves, so much so that the Premier, on coming to office, the Honorable Victor Banks, said, "This is the best financial situation I've ever inherited on coming to office." This is a matter of public record, but all of that money vanished into thin air, and we do not know what happened, because the Premier and the government of Anguilla continue to say, "We have a mandate to lead, and just believe us." But we just don't know. So there's a lot that we need to know, but it comes back to the maintenance, and as I said before, there's an agreement in every single memorandum of understanding between every foreign direct investor that comes to Angola and benefits from our duty-free concessions, a social clause, and we just have to trigger it, and we can go forward. And you see it happening in the West End, and the West End Primary School, Alvin Allenson Primary School with the Four Seasons Resort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Richardson, you have 1 minute to rebut or add further information.
Yeah, thank you very much. A lot of the ways that we can go about defending our small island state comes down to political will. But at the same time, it is true that people who come to Anguilla to invest, they are looking for a return on their investment. We then have to decide as a country how far we intend to go, if we will run some of these projects out, if they do not take on the responsibility for helping us to defend some of the interests that we have. As a minister of government, one of the most troubling aspects of trying to balance the needs of the country is the fact that on one spectrum, you have to account for mobilizing the country, finding work, creating jobs, and on the other hand, you have other issues that you have to deal with. It is not an easy task. The procurement process, for example, is a process that is very detailed, and it has failed successive governments from time to time. And it took me up to 3 times to get the procurement process to function properly, to bring an end to the expenditure for government vehicles. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we move on to the next question from the audience. What is your view on regional integration and movement of labor? One more time. What is your view on regional integration and movement of labor? We will start with Mr. Richardson after a minute, if he's ready. One more time. What is your view on regional integration and movement of labor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Regional integration is a very weighty topic. There are a lot of issues, some that we can speak to off the cuff of our hand, and then there are some that will require much more intense dialogue and debate among us as a people. One of the things that we in Angola must never forget is that when Angola had nothing, the Caribbean, St. Martin, Santo Domingo, everybody took us in, everybody loved us, everybody allowed us to come to their country and make a way of life. This is something that I hold dear and precious, because my grandmother was born in Santo Domingo. She came back here at the age of 3, simply because her parents had to go to Santo Domingo to make a way of life. So I am a product of Caribbean regional integration. I know the pain that is associated with people having to move to look work. I am very familiar with the issues. I support regional integration. I know that the OECS have been trying for a very long time to come up with one common space, one common region. They want even to come up with one common passport. But there are issues that we as a small island state will have to deal with, and those issues will confront us and impact us in real ways. So we have very serious discussions to have as a people when it comes to regional integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Hughes, same question.
Before we began speaking about regional integration, on January the 3rd, 1958, the West Indies Federation was formed. And this was intended to have regional integration between all of the countries, in particular those that were moving into a self-governing situation. And on the 31st of May, 1962, just 4 years later, this whole thing imploded when Jamaica pulled out and a number of countries pulled out. So the idea of regional integration is not something that we just started talking about. We've been talking about that for a very long time. We've been talking about that through CARICOM, we've been talking about that through the OECS, and even today, ministers of government from the non-self-governing states and those previous British overseas territories continue to meet on the issue of regional integration, and we still have not gotten there. It is something that sounds good on paper. For example, we would like to build our population, but we want more people to come in. But at the same time, we want our people to be forced. So it's a catch-22 in that, you know, there's issues if you do it, and there are issues if you don't do it. And I believe that has been the hindrance in why we have not gotten there from 1958 all the way until now. So yes, it's a beautiful dream. It's aspirational. But I honestly believe that we won't get there because we don't have the will to get there.
Mr. Richardson, if you wish, you have a minute to rebut or add further information, if you wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I have gone to several meetings with the OECS, and there are common issues affecting all of our countries that we have been able to work together collectively as a region. One such issue that we have been able to work with, that we are still mobilizing, is to put forward a case for the effects of sargassum, harmful effects on all of the Caribbean tourism industries, fishing, and so forth. So there are a lot of issues that we find in common as a region, as a people, that can serve us good with regional integration. But there are issues of individualism that will impact the success of it, and that has impacted the success of regional integration over the years. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes? Same question. If you wish, you have a minute to rebut or add for information. You good? Okay. Wonderful.
So the next question is, what will your administration do to further facilitate the needs of our special educational needs students? One more time. What will your administration do to further facilitate the needs of our special educational needs students? Mr. Hughes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. For many years, we've had special needs students. I remember as a little boy, there was a cousin of mine that had a daughter, and we never saw that daughter because she was held in a back room in the house. And I'm sure persons who are older than me know of these stories where there are persons who were challenged and they were held in the back room of their houses until they passed. But more recently, we have seen them coming out of the shadows. For example, Renuka Harrigan. Renuka Harrigan started the Blossom Center because she had a special needs child. And she has done so much, but she has not gotten the support that she deserved. And we have so many special needs children. Down at the Alvin Allison Primary School, there's a Hope Center where special needs children are being educated there. But I also believe that the Blossom Center also needs to have the support, and in the administration that I am part of will ensure that special needs children are given the respect, given the support, and these centers are given the support that they rightfully deserve, because I've seen miracles happen with children that no one thought, including doctors thought, that could stand up, could walk, and could speak. So unless there's support, that will never happen. So the administration that I will be part of on the 1st of July 2020 will ensure that special needs children are given their just due.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think that there are three things that needs to be done. That's the next administration that I'm a part of will seriously address in looking at special needs students. I have been a teacher for 30 years altogether, 15 in the United States Virgin Islands and 15 here in Anguilla. I have 30 years experience. One of the first things that has to be done is you have to bring and raise and train and educate specialist teachers. The magic in dealing with these special needs children is in having specialist teachers. Teachers who have the unction, who have the interest, who have the patience, that can go the distance in making these children the very best that they can be. The second thing is you have to have special spaces because these children are not sit to a desk. They have to have the space. And it is not the Hope Center, it's the Dove Center. But we all make slips at time. So just for the correct information, is the Dove Center. But it has to be special spaces, special resources. So those are the three things that I will ask the administration to do: specialist teachers, special spaces, and special resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for the correction.
Wait, one second. We'll just wait for the audience to...
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, on the correction of the name. Like I said before, I have two sons that goes to the Alvin Allison Primary School, and so I see the center every day, but hope springs eternal, and hope was in my mind. Be that as it may, I would agree as it relates to special spaces and special teachers and so forth, and that is what the Dove Center has. It has special spaces, but like I'm saying again, the support for the public institution and the support for the private institution needs to be of paramount importance. And we are here saying, when I am part of the next administration, we will do that. When I'm part of the next administration, we will do that. When for 5 years you did nothing. And I say that on the back that during the administration that I was part of, we lend support. So I know it can be done. It was done, and hopefully it'll be done again.
Okay, Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have to bring about the very best result for these special needs children by having teachers that are specially trained. You just cannot take any person and put them to deal with these special needs children. A serious effort has been made in Anguilla. When I first entered the education system here, it was not something that was addressed. I am happy and pleased that we have advanced over the years, and we now recognize that not all of the children are the same. Some of them are special needs, and as a country, I believe we will get there.
Okay, so we usually end at 9, but there's a lot of questions. So is it okay for us to ask 2 more questions, if that's okay with you guys? Is it okay? Okay. All right. I want to thank the audience for being so well-behaved so far. All right? No, seriously, you guys have been very well. All right, so next question. What are your plans for the development of fisheries and agriculture in Anguilla? And what role do you see the Department of Natural Resources playing in this? One more time. Wait, audience. What are your plans for the development of fisheries and agriculture in Anguilla? And what role do you see the Department of Natural Resources playing in this?
I'll take the question. I said earlier that your life's work, your record should determine where you're going. And I like to consider myself a farmer. I really like to consider myself a farmer because I do it as a hobby. And I've been doing it for a number of years. Elvet Hughes introduced me to farming more than 30 years ago, and I maintain that. And I can tell you as a farmer, it's extremely frustrating when roaming goats will enter your garden and eat everything. And we have legislation on the books that deals with roaming goats. And if you have a look at my flyer, one of the issues that I have on this is the issue of roaming goats. Another issue that we have is stray dogs. I have placed on my Facebook page numerous occasions where my rabbits, my ducks, my chickens, broilers, and layers, my goats have all been destroyed by stray dogs. That is an issue that we need to address in Anguilla. If we are serious about the development of farming in Anguilla, we have to address the issue of roaming goats and stray dogs. There are too many frustrated farmers in Anguilla have had to deal with that issue, and the legislation is there. It just needs to be enforced. That's one. As it relates to fishing, we need to lend full support to the fishing industry. We need to have a tariff that will be beneficial to them. And when we were in government from 2010 to 2015, we implemented tariffs that benefited the farmers, in particular the egg farmers and tomato farmers, where we implemented a tariff on the importation of eggs, and we removed the duties on farmers who are producing eggs, so much so that Bryan Central Farms expanded their farm, and Rocky Hill Poultry Farm got back into the business. And that is how you lend support to these industries, by ensuring that you use your tariff to facilitate the growth and development of these industries. And that is also the way that you have food security and self-sustainability.
Okay, Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Over the years, I have been the minister responsible for fisheries. I've also been the minister with responsibility for agriculture. One of the things that I have noticed is that there is a disjoint effort across the wide spectrum of government. And therefore, one of the things that I have commissioned and have been able to achieve that will move forward the natural resources, fisheries, and agriculture, as well as the environment, is I have, for the very first time in Anguilla, I have made one department out of natural resources, fisheries, and agriculture. I therefore expect, going forward into the future, very big results when it comes to natural resources, fishing, and agriculture, and environment. One of the things that we also need to push, that I have been working on, that is very frustrating and tedious, is the partnerships for fishing. Our fishermen have always worked one by themselves in small groups, but we need to come to the realization that for them to go way out to harvest the benefits in the 200 economic extended zone that we have in Anguilla, we need to build partnerships that will give them the results that we desire and help them to be able to expand in the fishing industry. This is a big challenge. It is easy to talk about, but it is a business venture. And whenever you engage in business ventures, people tend to get entangled about profits. Thank you very much.
We are very privileged in that the very same issue that the minister speak about is happening today. And I revert back to the Fabian brothers in Island Harbor. I visited what they are doing over there. They have an 85-foot trawler that needs support, that also needs government support, and they have embarked on an aggressive marketing campaign with Ivan Connor, Hooked Seafoods, and they have transformed the way they have been marketing their products and so forth. That trawler will be able to go out and exploit our 200 nautical miles for 2-3 weeks at a time and sometimes a month. They also want to embark on a fish processing plant here in Anguilla. And the administration that I'll be part of, that is led by the son of a fisherman and the brother of a fisherman, will ensure that these goals are realized. So I'm very happy and excited that in 12 days, thank you.
Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am happy to hear his enthusiasm about his fishermen from Island Harbor, but it is known that I also have a fisherman from Island Harbor on my team. And that fisherman,
Okay, so I want to remind us to be respectful, okay, guys? Let's be respectful. Okay. Mr. Richardson, you can finish your point.
all right, thank you. Thank you very much. I was saying that I too have someone who has the capacity for fishing. This has been one of the difficulties in Anguilla. I have gone down on record as sharing Yolan Richardson's grief that in a lot of instances in a lot of the communities, we have equally capable, competent, talented persons. And because of our political structure, it does not allow us or afford us the opportunities to work together. We are always at odds. But let that be as it may, I was very happy that when it came to fishing, that Mr. Orris Smith was able to give the government significant advice and direction, along with me as the Minister for Fisheries, to defend the fishing industry while at the same time defending the lives of the population here during the COVID period. Thank you all very much.
Last question. Last question. What decisions will your administration make, if elected, to reduce brain drain in Anguilla? I'll repeat. What decisions will your administration make, if elected, to reduce brain drain in Anguilla? We start with Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. One of the decisions that I will encourage my administration to take up to address brain drain is that we must find new ways of creating the spirit of entrepreneurship in Anguilla. There is the belief that in order to make a sensible livelihood, you have to leave your island, stay in the United States of America, stay in London, etc. I have come to understand by visiting a home up to yesterday, there's a young lady in Anguilla who's extremely brilliant. And what she is doing is every day she is teaching online from right here in her house in Anguilla. And she is able to earn extremely well an income that can defend her life and developing her family here in Anguilla. We are living in modern times, and the government of Anguilla has to also assist with providing financing and support, technical support as well, so that young persons and other brilliant minds can come back home and stay from in Anguilla and launch themselves, Anguilla to the world. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hughes?
One of the mistakes that I've seen government done over the years, especially as it relates to scholarships, is that persons who have been granted scholarships have been bonded, and those bonds suggest that when you're finished and you graduated, then you must return to Anguilla immediately. I believe that we need to allow those persons, and I know this is not necessarily a brain drain, you need to allow those persons the ability to stay out there and gain meaningful experience, whether it's a year, 5 years, or 10 years. And then when you return to Anguilla, you're equipped. You have the capacity, you have the experience, you have the learning and ability to move Anguilla forward. So that, I know some people, I've suggested that in the past, and persons say, but that's brain drain. It's not brain drain, it's building our capacity. Another thing that we need to do to address the brain drain is that we need to be a more listening government. We have so many brilliant ideas coming from young people, and we just throw them aside. We don't listen. And I can tell you, much of what I did when I was in administration wasn't my ideas. It was the ideas of young people who came to me, and we were able to get it done. And that is immensely important. And even as it relates to fishing, we talk about fishing, but if we have a government that consults with the people before making rash decisions, then we would not have to fix it again and have another meeting and fix it and risk protests and risk COVID spread due to that. So we must have also a listening government. And if you have a listening government, that too can address the issue of brain drain. Because when young people believe that no one is listening to them, then they say, you know what, I'm not going back to Anguilla because Anguilla don't want me. So we have to listen and we have to act.
Mr. Richardson, you have 1 minute to rebut or add further information.
The emotive reasons are there to be discussed. But I think the real issue of brain drain that has affected Anguilla, one has a lot to do with our population size and the fact that people who have businesses on the island cannot find the volume of business to keep them here. We have doctors who specialize in ear, nose, throat, who live in the United States of America for an extensive period of time. And while there are people in Anguilla who find this amusing during the political season, it is a testimony to the fact that there are certain professions that cannot easily and readily make their way here in Anguilla and sustain their businesses. So we need to understand the issue of brain drain. And while we have all the emotive factors that can rile people up, we need to be serious if we want to represent and build our country. Thank you very much.
And you went first. So, moving on. I was saying you rebutted first, so we're going to the closing statements now.
Oh.
Okay. So, okay. Oh, no, he did not. I'm sorry. He did not. Go ahead, Mr. Hughes. Go ahead.
And the minister demonstrated exactly why Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster is here. He demonstrated why. We spoke of ear, nose, and throat services. These services were being presented to the people of Anguilla since 2010. And because Dr. Webster saw the challenges in the delivery of healthcare, he decided to step up and offer himself to be a policymaker to change the trajectory of the way we have been delivering these services. And that is why the brain drain that we speak about is going to be halted, because we intend to enact policies, legislation, and regulations to ensure that our people return to Anguilla. I want to make one specific reference. In 2010, when we came to office, the Four Seasons Hotel, what was called the Viceroy Hotel, were all completely managed. Every department was managed by expatriates, everyone. And soon thereafter, the jobs were being advertised for the general manager, Jan Tebaldi, and the human resource manager, Kathy Kashmika. And we said, Anguillians at home and in the diaspora must apply for these jobs. And there was an Anguillian young lady by the name of Dala Hodge who applied. And she wasn't applying for the first time. She applied 3 times before and never even got a response. And when we insisted that these jobs must be held by the Anguillians, they had to respond. and she became the Human Resource Director of Viceroy Anguilla, which became Four Seasons Anguilla. That is how you address the brain drain, putting our people first.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Hughes. So now we come to the closing statements. We'll begin with Mr. Hughes. You have 3 minutes, and then we'll go to Mr. Richardson with the same time allotment. So, Mr. Hughes, you can begin.
Firstly, I want to thank God for the mercies bestowed upon my father, who was a long-standing servant of the people and is now in cancer treatment. I pray that he returns home in strength and vigor. To the membership and executive of the Anguilla National Youth Council, I say thank you. Thank you for providing this platform, and I believe that this is a great step for our future development. I want to thank you, the supporters, for your passion and zeal for Anguilla. This deal demonstrates that we can work together to lift this country up, and we can rise to the lofty heights our forefathers envisioned. To the people of Road South, I cannot thank you enough. You have been my inspiration, and when you elect me to Parliament in the next 12 days, you will know that you have someone who has always found a way to get things done. If one have to make a determination if the person they are electing can get the job done, then all one has to do is look at their record. Compare what I have done as a private individual and in public office. I believe this is the time that Anguilla will make the decision to change the way we have done business of government. It is a time when we will elect a government that will take better care of its people, develop a more functional generation, reposition our product, create policies that drive economic diversification, and implement legislation to achieve the sustainable development goals on the environment. This is the time when we capitalize on our ocean assets while bringing transformational change to our agricultural sector. We will look back and recognize that this was the time when the youth sat at the table in the spirit of inclusion and empowerment while building a sustainable future for all Anguillians. This is that time. So as we leave here tonight, I want to particularly speak to the people of Road South. You will stand tall. Your importance in nation building and national development will be represented, for it is over 90% of our visitors that arrive through Blowing Point and through South Hill. Our enhancement as a community, both physical and social, will be top priority. We will get it done, and I am confident of it. My record, both in the private and limited time in the public sector, speaks to the possibility of tomorrow. Let us grasp that opportunity. Let us not allow this chance to escape us, because change can't wait. I thank you.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Hughes, for your closing statement. We'll now have the closing statement from Mr. Richardson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The people of Anguilla have been the beneficiaries of our excellent work in the last 5 years. All 17 SDGs have been advanced to varying degrees as a result of our work ethic and commitment. SDG 1, poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, and SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, were realized when Capjuluka, the island's flagship, was resurrected and given a name, a new name, Belmont Capjuluka. SDG 3, good health and well-being, more than ever before is being propelled to unprecedented heights as the polyclinic with dental facilities is being erected in South Hill.
Okay, wait a second.
Still making the
Mr.
case.
Richardson, we'll pause your time for a second. Guys, we have to allow Mr. Richardson to give his closing statement, please. Okay? Wait, Mr. Richardson. Guys, okay, you can continue.
Thank you very much. SDG 3, good health and well-being, more than ever before is being propelled to unprecedented heights as the polyclinic with dental facilities is being erected in South Hill. Making the case even stronger is the New Valley Health Complex with a state-of-the-art pharmacy which will provide greater access to medicine. SDG 4, quality education, is topping the charts for this government. Government is building state-of-the-art primary schools all over this country. Of special mention is the end to the rat and bat-infested classrooms at the Adrian T. Hazel Primary School. SDG 6 speaks of clean water and sanitization. When I came to office, Anguilla had a despicable water story. We were daily rationing filthy water. Today, Anguilla is bathing and washing at her leisure without the hassle of catching water or cooping the pipe. We simply refer to this restoration of dignity and decent standard of living as 24/7. The first response against COVID-19 made a demand on the abundance of clean water, and I am elated that I did not fail my country in providing this clean water in abundance for the washing of hands and heightened levels of cleanliness. SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, have been a priority of mine. Prior to September 2017, I invested in a partnership program supporting the conversion of plywood dwellings into hurricane-resistant concrete structures. While they are more aesthetically pleasing, the great benefit was the protection they afforded persons who otherwise would have been vulnerable to the ravages of Hurricane Irma. People have real lives, and their lives matter. It is amazing, fellow Anguillians, truly remarkable that one administration in one 5-year term could face the economic woes of 2015, face a devastating hurricane in 2017, and face the COVID-19 pandemic that closed the country on March the 20th this year, and still keep the country in peak operating condition. Let hope spring eternal. Tonight, I have every confidence that Anguillians will honor those whose work has been the backbone of making life in this nation worth the living. Fellow Anguillians, I urge you, stay in the blessed place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. That brings us to the end of the debate for the night. Join us on Friday with District 2. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.